Here's the question. How do you make the impossible possible? Simple. Remove the I am, the ego. Now, how do you step into that newfound possibility? With a series of small intentional steps. Never forget, the greatest among us started from humble beginnings. But to truly unlock your potential, realize you're here for something greater. If you're yearning for more than just a good life, let's take that small step together to reach greatness. Welcome to the Greatness from Small Beginnings podcast, where we're talking to those who have gone from mediocrity to motivated, overlooked to overachieving, forgettable to unforgettable. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome back. Welcome back. I just want to thank you for joining. There's been a lot of solo podcasts recently, and part of that is because at work, things have been crazy. And so this podcast will be a little bit about that from a different slant. I've also been doing quite a few of my podcasts based on business, and I can't not do that because that's who I am. I'm in business. But in the case of this one today, it should mean something to almost everybody. I got this idea of this podcast from a magazine called the Tuttle Twins. We get it because our grandkids come and they read it, and we read things to them. We preview them, and it's called a monthly magazine for kids, and it comes to our house. And we don't have any kids at our house anymore. Grandkids, though, at times. But I just happened to pick this one up, open it to the very middle, and there's an article about competition and not giving up. So we're going to read through that, and I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about some of the concepts here. So thanks for joining me on Greatness from Small Beginnings. And that is what discipline and competition is a lot about, is greatness, but starting small, starting in small steps, like the intro says. The picture here says, don't give up. And there's these kids doing certain things, okay? And the prescript says, when we think of competitions, we usually think there have to be winners and losers. But when you compete against yourself, there's always an opportunity to be a winner, even if you come in last place. All right, the little article here will put that in context. Competing against an opponent is a great way to test your skill level. And it's also what makes games and sports challenging and fun. Only one person can come in first place, but we can learn that first place isn't the only achievement worthy of honor. Have you ever tried to get really good at something? Maybe learning an instrument, drawing, or playing a sport. Now, let's take a minute and say, based on capacity, if I could probably learn some of the skills of drawing and have done some artistic types of things over in my life, but in every case, I had to work extra hard to make it even look halfway decent. So I'm not very an artsy person, although I do appreciate it. So capacity is one thing a person needs to look at when you're looking at these things. That being said, on day one, when you're trying something new, trying to get good at something, you probably struggled and weren't very good. Too many times, this experience is so frustrating that you or people in general give up. But giving up would be a mistake, because every single person who ever became great at something started out struggling in some way. They started out with a small beginning. Any great achievement requires discomfort, struggle, and mistakes. Don't be afraid to fall or fail, because failures and tripping up, falling, are opportunities to learn and become better versions of yourself. Practice makes progress, so don't quit. Keep practicing, and after a few weeks of consistent practice, you'll see improvement. If you keep working at it, after a year of practice, you'll have improved by leaps and bounds. I'll get to that in a minute with some stats. For example, If you want to lift weights, you might need to start with 10 pounds or even a few pounds. And then to beat your own record, go to 20 and then to 30. Each time you're able to lift heavier weights, you set what weightlifters, or in most sports, an athlete will call their personal best or your personal record. You set those milestones and it becomes something to achieve, and it's set, and actually they become micro goals on as you're headed to some grander goal. The only way to master a skill is by taking the time to practice, repetition, pushing yourself be a little better every day. The truth is, the most important and challenging competitions you'll ever participate in won't be against other people. They will be the ones when you compete against yourself. You might even say that you are in competition with the person you were yesterday, and perhaps even the person you are today. And you're competing towards that person you want to be tomorrow. So I recently read another article and then heard confirmation on a video, I believe it was on Instagram, where it was talking about if we practice one thing for 18 minutes a day, and I assume that we can take a weekend off or a day off here and there, but make it consistent and steady, or 18 minutes a day for a year, you will be in the top 5% of the world in that skill. Now, that's not the top 5% of the world, because that's still millions of people. It's the top 5% of the world in that skill. Anybody that participates in it, I don't know how we find that out, how we find out how many people are in that category. But the point is, you can get to 95% better than everybody else doing that thing if you practice for 18 minutes a day for a whole year. That competition that you're having against yourself is what's carrying you to that goal of being better than almost everybody. Now, if there's a certain capacity for it, it might even be more than 5%. But the point is that spend 18 minutes a day. Spend the time, the effort, the energy, the thinking time to, one of my mentors tells me, we got to think, we got to be before we can do. So you have to consider, when you set a goal of something competitive against yourself or others, maybe as an athlete, you're going to do something athletic. For instance, less than a year ago, I ran a marathon, and I had to train 100 hours at least for a 5. I ran slow, but I ran steady. 5 hours I ran a marathon in. But it was hours and hours of training prior to that. And I will say this, that when I got to 3 weeks before the marathon, 3 weeks and a day before the marathon, I did a 20-mile training run. And when I finished that training run, the last 2 miles of it, I struggled so bad. And I thought, okay, so if that was a 26-mile run I was doing that day, I would have struggled for a total of 8.2 miles to get to my goal of finishing. And I said, my body is just not quite there. And that day, it seemed like I was still learning about my body, because that's the furthest I had run up to that point. It was 20 miles. And so I decided that I would do one more week, and 2 weeks and a day before the marathon, I did that. I did a 22-mile training run, because I needed to make sure that if I was going to struggle, it would only be the last 3 or 4 miles. And I felt fantastic on that training run. And I mentioned to someone else that does running, and they said, no, you got to know your body. So if you know you're not ready, then you need to train one more time or go a little deeper. So it's the competition, and especially athletics and well, other things too, but athletics, you have to know yourself. You have to think through it. So think, be, and that is, in that case, I was being a runner. Now, do I consider myself a runner? Well, I am because I've done it, but do I consider it natural? No, I didn't start running until I was almost over 55 years old. I always worked hard, but I never considered myself a distance runner, a runner of any kind. But I guess what? I become a runner by going and doing it. I had become. So it's a think, be, do. So you got to go be it, and then you could do it at progressively higher levels. So there's the podcast for today. There's the things I wanted to say. And I want to encourage you to keep getting good input to find the areas of greatness. I don't go around looking all over the place constantly. I don't spend hours every week looking for things about greatness. But did you notice in this article, it talked about being great? And yet, when I start looking for them on social media and in books and things I'm reading, then they come to me. So whatever you're looking for, whatever you think about and want to be and become, you will find. That's my encouragement to you for the day. And I know that you were built for something more than average, more than just adequate to others. You were built for more than that. And my encouragement to you is my call to action that I finish every podcast with is go be great.